Welcome to Bad Actors, the Armis Cybersecurity podcast and go-to guide for cutting-edge insights and information for protecting against today's cyber threat landscape. I am your host, Rebecca Craddock, and I'm delighted to welcome today's guest. He is well known in cybersecurity circles, having been in the industry for over 25 years, with roles at Mobilion and CA Technologies, amongst others. He has been at the helm of Armis's customer and sales operations for the last 4 years, and most recently took on expanded responsibilities and has become the president of Armis. Alex Mosher, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to Bad Actors.
Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. Now, before we dive into Armis and the journey that we're on and cyber-related things, we are filming this literally 24 hours after one of the biggest UK-US trade agreements that have been signed in recent years. Now, I'm a Brit, you're an American. There's lots and lots to unpack in that, and we're not going to go into too much detail about food, tariffs and steel. But the thing that stood out for me was the digital element of the deal. And the tech tariffs have been a big talking point over the last couple of weeks. UK and the US have massive tech sectors. Do you think this global alliance, this future innovation state, is a good thing for the way in which organizations are set up today?
Well, first of all, I think that it's great that their first really major trade agreement between, anyone in the United States and the world was our good partners in the UK. And you and I have a lot of fun poking at each other's countries respectively,
Yep.
all of the time. But in all seriousness, it's incredibly important. It's incredibly important to the tech sector overall. There's incredible talent here in the U.S. There's incredible talent there in the U.K. Organizations have collaborated for many, many decades, especially in cybersecurity, between the two countries. And I think that this trade agreement and the specific focus and call out on the fact that that tech is important to both countries, I think is incredibly positive for our industry as a whole, and really for the global economy going forward. That it really, I think, establishes right out of the gate that the tech hubs for the next 20 plus years are going to be in the US and in the UK. So I think it's really great from that vantage point for both countries, and a lot more poking fun at you Brits, I think, in the future, and I'm sure vice versa back to us here in the US.
You can absolutely rely on that from me, Alex. Now, Armis obviously just recently launched a London headquarters for Europe. And so just to lead to that point, finally, one of the things I think Armis will benefit, we have a massive talent of a massive pool of talent in the UK. And as you say, as we broaden out our own platform in Europe, we can only see the benefit of this sort of enablement coming together, that you can leverage some of the skill sets that we've had within our own organisation and multiply that across the rest of Europe and America for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the great privileges that I've had in my tenure at Armis was shortly after I began at the company. I spent a lot of time in the beginning building out our international business and practice, and specifically spent a lot of time away from family and home in the European market, and even more honed in on the market there in the UK, building out Armis's presence, really starting from there and then moving across the rest of the European continent. It's been an incredible pleasure of mine to build the team and the organization that we have, our customer base, our partners across that market over the past almost 4.5 years. Since taking that leap forward with the original employee base there in the UK, France, and in Germany, and to look at the organization today, where we have just dozens and dozens of amazing folks across not just the go-to-market organization, they're based out of London, but all parts of the Armis business, and we will continue to invest very heavily in that talent pool as we go forward. We see the international market being a market that like here in the U.S. as an organization, we can dominate in market presence and attracting the best talent in the world, because that's what causes Armis to win at the end of the day, and our customers love it. They love our presence there in London, and it was great to be able to kick that off. I haven't had a chance yet, though, Rebecca, to visit the new office, but I'm really looking forward out to it. I've been on probably 100 different virtual tours, and I was involved in the selection process. So that was really exciting. But to cement Armis's location there, right in the heart of London, no better location for us to be in. As we go forward, it's going to just kind of radiate across the country, and we'll be expanding into additional markets and additional investment in teams across not just the European continent, but across the entire globe.
Yeah. And I look forward to you coming over very soon and seeing it, because it has really energized and expanded the team's focus by having such a key footprint in London. So I wanted to talk to you specifically about a subject that everybody is sick and tired of hearing about, but it is a real problem. There are rising escalations across the market at the moment. Every single sector is seeing huge problems with cybersecurity threats. We know that in the last couple of days, CISA actually created this sort of operational technology pathway of how to mitigate against this new threat. And Armis has always been at the forefront of talking about cyber warfare, particularly state nation sponsored attacks. Geopolitical landscape is quite fractured at the moment. How can organizations really prioritize their digital transformation projects at the moment? This lack of borders when it comes to cyber threats is always been a discussion point, but it's got even worse recently. What can they do to stay ahead of that threat?
It's a great question, and really like the challenge that organizations face. And shameless plug here from an Armis perspective in the process. So I'll disclose that up front. I think you really need to have a step back moment where you look at, where are you in that journey? Where are you trying to go? So where were you when you started the journey? Where are you today? And where are you trying to get to? And when are you trying to get there? I think that in order to answer that question, you have to really understand the landscape of where are you as an organization. So where are all of my assets? And regardless of asset type, and we're certainly seeing that evolve at a faster pace than we've ever seen before, right? Back when I started in this business, there was no such thing as cloud. We used to just draw the cloud as like this magic network thing that happened in the background when we were trying to talk about two data centers talking together or two office locations talking together. But in reality today, you've got systems and services and critical applications that all run within the cloud. You have systems that still run on-prem that are physical, traditional assets. You have assets that are virtual in nature, and a growing pool of those assets. You have assets that obviously run in the cloud in all forms and facets today, from infrastructure to applications. The reason I say this is because in order to really figure out where am I going to get to and how can I get there from a digital transformation perspective, I've got to be able to answer this fundamental question. And I think a lot of organizations started on the journey of digital transformation by oftentimes maybe picking a specific business unit or a specific application and saying, okay, we're going to digitally transform this process within the organization. But now they're having a lot of reflection moments to your point around cybersecurity and everything else, saying, well, did we really do this the right way? Did we go on this journey the way that we wanted to venture down this path? And I think that it's a great moment in time, because now we have amazing technology that can help you answer these questions that couldn't be answered, a decade ago, or even in many cases, 5 years ago, in the marketplace. We can now answer, we can now have this fundamental understanding, and we can plan much more effectively, and we can make cyber a part of that planning process right up front, right? Cyber can actually become a major enablement tool for organizations down their digital transformation path. It doesn't have to be the obstacle. It doesn't have to be the group that when you go to the security team, they just say no to everything. Like, no, you can't do that. No, that's going to be a security risk. They really need to be the enablement organization that says, like, yes, we're going to go on this journey with you. And we can actually, because of cyber, accelerate the process to go achieve whatever that outcome is, whether it's digital transformation of an application, a system, a process. And I think the next area that's going to be really interesting around cyber and digital transformation to this question is going to be the impact of AI. And more AI is going to play into much of the digital transformation experience. It's going to be like digital transformation 2.0. So great, you brought your applications, your systems, to the cloud, but now it's going to be how do I really enhance the user experience, whether that be a B2C user experience, a B2B user experience by incorporating AI into the mix. And again, if you can't sort of answer those basic questions of, well, okay, what are the assets? What are the applications? What are the systems? What are the services that I have? What are the risks that they present to the organization? You're really not going to be able to introduce AI into the mix because AI can be both amazing friend and incredible foe at the exact same time. So how you handle that and how you plan around that's going to be really, really important for organizations going forward.
And it's interesting. I was going to ask you about AI later on, but while we're on this subject, I wonder how easy those conversations are when you are speaking to CISOs and CIOs that absolutely get the journey that they need to go on and how you've outlined perfectly just now. Do they then are they then able to scale that to a board level conversation of budget requirement, manpower, AI investment? Is it genuinely the headlines are correct that the board are understanding these priorities and these problems that they need to address?
I think in my personal opinion, I think that it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think that very much the CISOs, the CIOs out there, they're very much, in the weeds, very much thinking about this. And that's, I think, a credit and a testament to our industry. But let's face it, AI in particular is transforming faster than even the AI gurus thought was going to be the case just a few short years ago. So transformation is happening faster and it has the opportunity to impact in a very positive way organizations. It also has the opportunity to impact organizations in a very negative way if they don't plan and if they don't respond accordingly from that perspective. I just in the interactions that I have with C-level executives across the global 2000, I think that they're still struggling a little bit with that board level conversation. Not that they can't have it, but does the board fully grapple and understand the speed and the pace in which this is happening? Because I think they try to, back to your original question around digital transformation, they're like, okay, great. We sponsored a digital transformation program within, say, a financial institution, and we knew that that program was going to take 5 to 10 years to go accomplish. Now you have to think about AI and the scale of how do I begin to introduce it in, sub 12-month cycles to be that next gen of digital transformation for an organization. I don't know that boards and the folks that are controlling the purse strings, if you will, Rebecca, fully understand that. I think they see, though, at the same token, the market responding so positively to AI organizations and AI investment that I think they'll start to wake up to it more aggressively. But I think the winners and the losers from a cyber perspective and even ultimately a business perspective are going to be those organizations that transform in and around AI the fastest. They're going to come out in that leading position. They're going to be able to provide better services for their clients, their customers, whether that be B2B or B2C. It's going to kind of be irrelevant. Everyone's going to expect it, and they're going to expect this massive transformation to happen in a very, very short amount of time.
And it's interesting, there's a sort of sub question to this. If that's the case, and there's going to be some transition for people to understand what they need to invest in, I wonder whether the financial repercussions of a cyber threat after the fact might be some of the triggers for some of these organizations. There is a lot of talk about cyber insurance, the increasing cyber insurance policies that organizations are having to take on now. So in a way, it might one might lead the other in that they're going to have to start taking this very seriously because the projects that they need to do are going to affect their bottom line, whether it's insurance payments or indeed something that is after the fact of a cyber threat and it is brand reputation or loss of earnings.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, I was with recently a couple of weeks ago when I was in Europe. I visited a insurance company that one of the things that they provide is B2B cyber insurance. And what was a really interesting data point that they shared with me, Rebecca, is that less than 2% of all applications that they get as an insurance provider do they actually ultimately underwrite and insure, which was fascinating to me. It's a great business for them. By the way, like it's a business, I should say a great business from a growth perspective. So even at only 2% acceptance of their clients, to your point on rising rates and everything else, they're making, good money in and around that, pending that there's not any type of cyber incident with their clients. But the reason that they shared with me, by the way, that they have such a large decline rate for organizations is that organizations fail to be able to answer those basic questions in and around how they secure themselves. So I think that rates will continue to go up until we can start to universally show and demonstrate that we've taken proactive steps to prevent, a disaster from a cyber perspective, much of the same way that, you hear about big storms in the US all the time, right? Whether you live in Florida, you start building infrastructure with different roofs and different quality building quality materials so that you can withstand a hurricane. Here in Texas, you got to think about hurricanes and tornadoes and everything else. And so, and hail. And so we had to use, different roofing materials. The same logic, by the way, applies to the cyber world when it comes to insurance. Insurance providers want to be able to say, like, okay, you've taken the necessary steps for me to underwrite you and take the risk associated with the fact that you've got the right controls in place to secure the organization. I think that organizations are still struggling with that, and AI is just going to add another layer to it. So if you're not already caught up to where kind of business was, let's call it 5 years ago, Rebecca, to be able to answer those basic questions, now you've got even more questions you have to be able to go answer in this arena. I think the other piece that you hit on there that's really important is the implication of a cyber attack continues to cost more and more and more for organizations, and remediation is becoming more and more difficult for organizations to go do. I was reading an article and then subsequently had a chance to actually meet with this organization. There was a French hospital that actually suffered a ransomware attack, and they actually had to shut down the hospital for nearly 2 years to replace every piece of digital equipment that the hospital had in place. Massive, tens of millions of dollars of cost associated with that. Not to mention, by the way, their inability to service, their clients and the community that they serve, which is their primary objective. So I think those realities will become more and more the case for organizations if they don't begin to take those real steps in heavy investment around cyber. And one of the things that's not helpful from that vantage point is we've kind of come through a couple of years where cyber spending did decline a bit globally, and I think now organizations are trying to quickly play catch up in and around that, where they're trying to identify highly valuable solutions to bring into the organization to help them answer all these questions so that they can be prepared when and if there's an incident.
But that must be quite frustrating, because I've had a number of customers, of Armis customers on this podcast, who have talked about that sort of legacy spend that they've, on infrastructure and technical tools over the last 10, 15, depends which customer. And the frustration for them is that they're having to constantly modernize and rip and replace some of their technologies, because the stuff that they were promised 10 years ago is just not fit for purpose nowadays. So to your point about the poor French hospital, that sounds absolutely horrendous. They're spending millions and millions of dollars on something that I suppose they thought they'd already spent that money and they could bank it and leverage that investment, but it's now not worth anything for them. They've got to sort of pivot again. That's really challenging. How do you balance that, the use of the technology that they've invested on, but the need to do more and more with new?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the reality is you have to find that balance point. Like there's no option, because threats continue to evolve. They continue to use more and more technology. I think one of the ways, and you and I talked about this a little bit with some clients when we were at RSA just a short time ago. The thing that I always struggle with is if you can't answer the basic questions, what do I have and what's its risk that it presents to me? How do you know that you should be investing in all of the other cyber, technology that's out there? And that was the question I posed to you while we were, on the RSA floor looking out there. I said, there's, just tons and tons of vendors, but how do you cut through the noise? How do you begin to understand this? And if you can't answer that basic, board level question of what do I have and what's the risk that it presents to me and how do I go mitigate and control that risk, then how do you know what you should be investing in? How many firewalls do I need? How many EDRs do I need? How many other technologies from a cyber perspective do I need? And I think in the old traditional way of cybersecurity, we just sort of made those investments in a hope that we kind of got it right, right? And for a lot of organizations, they kind of did. And for some organizations that ultimately suffered some type of breach, they obviously got it wrong. I think that now today there are technology solutions, Armis being one of them, that can help you answer those basic questions to begin with, and then take you on a journey as an organization to really be smart with how you're investing. I think I shared with you a story. I was with a manufacturing company in the southwestern United States a couple of weeks back. And what was interesting was I met with the line of business and I met with the cyber team at the exact same time. And the manufacturing floor business line, they shared with me, they said, well, all I keep getting from the cyber team is this request every year to give them 8 to 10% more money. And I don't know what I'm getting for it. I don't know what's coming out of it because I can't even answer some of these basic questions. We've since gone on a journey with them to be able to help them understand, what their manufacturing process, looks like, what the assets are that are involved with it, everything that's happening both on the manufacturing floor, everything that's happening virtual, everything that's happening in the cloud, to give them, number one, that level of visibility and understanding of what are their assets. Number two was then to be able to frame and say, like, okay, what are the risk profile that these assets present to the organization? And then how are you going to go about remediating those assets, whether it be automatically or manually through process in the organization? I think what's important is now they have that clear understanding, Rebecca, of like, okay, I now understand why I'm doing refresh cycles on different parts of the business from a security perspective, because I can clearly understand where my security gaps are. And I can correlate that back to the spend that's occurring in the environment. I can also understand, the tech debt that I have throughout the environment, right? So I can understand, oh, you know what? These systems are old and legacy. So I have a clear understanding of that spend that needs to go and allocate to that. And now able to really formulate in a matter of just a couple of clicks within an environment, a business user sitting down, not an IT professional, certainly not a cyber professional, being able to sit down, develop board level reports that they can go back and say, hey, board, guess what? I was giving 8 to 10%. I actually need this to be 15. And here's why. And here's what it's going to fuel from a growth perspective. So it's back to my earlier comment on, cybersecurity investments can very much be a massive enablement component for an organization if and when done correctly, because you can start to really be very smart about how you're spending your money, where it's being spent throughout an organization.
It's interesting you talk about this because I had Aaron Weissman, the CISO of Mainline Health, on our podcast last week, and he was saying that just using the Armis platform has enabled him to find devices that they had previously purchased, but they weren't leveraging, and their medical team weren't aware that they had them. And so the use of cyber, the specific technologies we were able to provide to them, has enabled them to reuse existing budgets, but also then double down in areas that they weren't planning on spending on, but they could now free up that money to spend on. So to your point about the manufacturing company, I think visibility, I know everyone is an overused word, but visibility on all aspects of your business, whether it's finding devices, working out where you need to spend money, is key for the future of development.
Yep. It's incredibly important. And then when you couple that with the realities, whether that be in, public sector spending around the globe, Rebecca, or, even the private sector, the commercial world spending, one of the questions that everybody wants to be able to answer, and I think in particular here in the US, we've put a big spotlight on it, is around, where is my money going? And am I getting the value that I ultimately want and need out of my investments? We were recently working with a large county here in the U.S. in the public sector, and they had nearly 100,000 endpoints that had a vulnerability management scanner on it. And by deploying Armis into the environment, we quickly were able to help them understand and discover across the environment that actually 30,000 of those assets from a vulnerability scanner perspective had not checked in or had not been updated in more than 6 months. So it was a really quick question for their CISO and CIO of, well, number one, should that have happened? And do I have an operational problem within the organization? Or do I have assets that, I'm oversubscribed from a licensing perspective? I'm oversubscribed from maybe a deployment perspective. And I need to have, that basic understanding of, again, like, what do I have? And then, what's its risk profile that's associated with me? Once we helped them understand that, we were able to actually even further analyze those analyze approximately a third of those assets in the environment, help them understand, okay, from a risk perspective, from a vulnerability perspective, you don't have a scanner happening, but you have other technology and tools running on those assets. We were able to provide them with a holistic picture of the risk profile associated with all of those assets, operating systems, patch levels, and all of those things, as well, by aggregating together all of their data elements across those assets, and at least provide them with a level of reassurance that nothing was compromised at this point, but we've got to help you hurry up and mitigate this problem going forward, so that you don't have this massive risk hanging over the agency, or in this case the county. We see that though all over the world, right? It's not unique to the public sector. It's not unique to states or counties or cities here in the U.S. It's not unique to commercial organizations. We see that time and again. We were recently engaged with a large technology company, Rebecca, out of the Bay Area, and one of the basic questions they needed to understand was they made a large investment in a new EDR platform, and they just simply wanted to know, okay, I bought X amount of licenses, call it 200,000 licenses of an EDR platform, and I need to simply answer the question of, is it deployed everywhere in the environment that the EDR needs to be deployed, so that I can go report back to your board level question. I can report to the board like, yes, this investment was worthwhile. We're fully protected now with a new EDR, and I've got that checkbox. And without Armis, they wouldn't have been able to answer that very basic question.
That's really interesting. And it leads me on to another question about sort of expansion and along the journey that a lot of organizations are on. So some are obviously at the early infancy, they're looking for that visibility question. They just want to know what they've got. But obviously we've been working with some customers for years and years. They've gone down the journey, they're buying multiple products from Armis as a platform. And we know that as the year goes on, more and more organizations are sort of starting to move along the journey, whether you call it zero trust or you call it cyber risk exposure or risk management or whatever your journey is. Everybody seems to be sort of moving away from this point solution sell to that platform play. Now, Armis has done exactly this sort of journey themselves. We've expanded from our early visibility product to vulnerability and now early warning. If you reference that back to some of the sort of key customer conversations you're having, why are people starting to move in that way? Why are they going on that journey for complete sort of resolution of their entire risk environment?
Yep. I think it's not only just that, but when you step back even further and you say, like, why does a platform matter, right? Why not just buy best of breed? Why not just buy a point solution? Because I think this question needs to get answered before you can answer, kind of the second question. And the reason is back to, the conversation we've been having here this morning, which is around investment and dollars and cost. And it's not that necessarily a point solution is going to be on the surface more expensive or less expensive or even better in many cases. The reason that you want to invest in a platform, and to me, a platform is a really simple thing. It's the most overused term in our business out there today, outside of maybe the word partnership that everybody likes to talk about in our industry. But to me, a platform, and I kind of go back on my 25 plus years in this industry. A platform to me is a central brain or engine that has a multitude of standalone products that are built on top of that, and products that can be enabled or disabled at a customer's whim, depending on where they are in their journey and what they're trying to accomplish. It can't be, because if you have a platform, but it's not a fully integrated central stack of individual standalone products, then the problem you get into is you effectively have bought a point solution, because now you as an organization have to figure out how to integrate this technology into the rest of the stack. So if you look at like the Armis 5 products we go to market with, right? You have asset management and security, fully integrated with OT, IoT security, integrated with medical device security, integrated with our Viper Pro capabilities around vulnerability prioritization and security findings remediation, coupled then with our early warning capabilities. The power of our platform is I can go to a customer and say, okay, like we can turn on early warning today for you. You can run it for the next 6 to 12 months and reap all of the benefits with it. And you kind of had to do nothing. Even from an operationalization perspective, you kind of had to do nothing. You might tweak a policy here or there, or you might change a dashboard here or there as a result, but you're not having to spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions and millions of dollars trying to integrate these technologies and operationalize them within your business. One of the biggest hurdles that cyber teams face in this accelerated world today is not even acquiring the technology, Rebecca, it's operationalizing it. And the operational holdups are usually not practice related, they're integration related, right? They're how do I bring this and integrate this into the rest of the stack that I have within the organization and be able to move forward with that.
Yeah, fascinating. And I think we're seeing a lot of different customers on that journey as they grow their engagement with Armis, and it's very exciting for the rest of this year for sure. One final question before we wrap. What would be your biggest piece of advice for organizations this year trying to tackle the multitude of projects that they're addressing?
That's a great question and a phenomenal one to end on. I think that my biggest piece of advice to organizations is to do what I said in the beginning, which is take a moment and step back and see if you can actually answer those basic fundamental questions. I was with the CISO of a Fortune 10 company earlier this week, and we actually pulled up his 5 top priorities for the year. And what was interesting was his number one priority was completing the process of understanding his assets, regardless of asset type, across the environment. So we've been on a journey for a short time with this organization where we've been in the process of now we've deployed Armis. They're starting to get a tremendous amount of value from the solution in providing that basic understanding of their physical assets throughout their environment. And today they actually own 4 of the 5 products that we have within the product portfolio. They're in the process now of operationalizing the Viper Pro capabilities. What was interesting was when we pulled up his kind of 5 priorities for the year, 3 of the 5 priorities I thought really hit the mark on this. Number one, understand what I have. Understand what I have, whether it be physical, understand what I have, whether it's virtual or it's in the cloud, and provide me with one single source to where I have end-to-end visibility. And it's not just visibility of the assets, because that's sort of the table stakes thing, Rebecca. It's give me visibility on the risk profile now associated with each of these assets. Let me understand the security findings that are on them. Let me understand the vulnerabilities that are on them. Let me understand the emerging threats that I need to be aware of associated with these assets. Just having a checklist of assets in the environment, like that's interesting, but that was sort of yesterday's news. Now you really want to be able to understand and explain, okay, what's the risk associated with that? Do I have that risk mitigated? Can I manage the asset completely? And do I understand, by the way, the implications of that asset related to every other asset across the environment, regardless of asset type, right? It's not good enough just to know about my OT or IoT assets or my medical assets. I need to know about all of them, and I want to be able to see that from an integrated perspective. So I think number one is to step back. I think number two piece of advice, or part of the evolution of that advice, is make sure that you stay hyper focused on that platform play. Lots of best of breed noise that's out there. There's lots of little, what I would call tool solutions that are out there in the market. But think about like, where's your business going to be, not just, this year, but where's your business going to be in 3 years? And am I making an investment that, is going to actually provide a massive ROI because I invested in the correct platform? Or did I buy a bunch of point solutions and now I'm trying to glue them all together, trying to get them to work, spending tons of time with each of the vendors, trying to get vendor A to work with vendor C, and then I introduced vendor B and vendor D, and now I'm trying to get them into the mix. I'm trying to operationalize all of this with my team. In many cases, that team may still be a distributed workforce, part of them working maybe in a traditional SOC operations center, part of them being remote, now trying to coordinate all of that together. It's kind of a nightmare, quite candidly, for executives trying to, number one, just get the talent pool that they need in place, but then trying to spend the time integrating all of this together. How much custom development am I going to have to build? And what's that custom development by building an integration between these 2 vendor solutions going to cost the business versus the business going and taking that money and investing in actual technology and capabilities for the business itself, right? To your digital transformation comments earlier, and how can I make sure that I'm investing in that area? And then the last piece of advice that I would have for organizations is like you and I commented about, on the RSA floor. There's a lot of noise out there, and I challenged a number of folks that were at RSA to just go on the show floor and just take a deep breath of silence in yourself and just like hear the noise, and now try to put yourself in a customer's shoes of trying to cut through that noise. I think that we need to go back to the basics of, tried and trusted and true solutions out there in the marketplace, from large at scale vendors with incredible track record in the market. I think Armis obviously has achieved that as an organization. And I love the fact that our customers constantly go out and sell on our behalf, way better than I could. Actually, I got to share this little plug for one of our customers here real quick. The team came up to me out on the show floor, and they said, Alex, like, this CISO of this big financial institution came over with some other clients, and we were trying to do a demo, and he's like, no, 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 I got this, right? The CISO is like, I want to demo this myself for these others. So finding those simple integrated solutions. By the way, that's an organization that owns 3 products, Rebecca, from us today, and have deployed in their environment. They actually got everything deployed and operationalized in their environment in sub 45 days. So an incredible success story where they replaced 3 non-integrated solutions with one integrated solution from Armis. So really, really exciting. That would be, I guess, my advice to organizations. There are ways to be able to invest your dollar smartly. There are organizations out there that desperately do want to truly partner with you and achieve your goals and objectives. And I think it all starts with being able to answer that very basic question of, what do I have? What's the risk that it presents to me? And how am I going to go and mitigate that risk at the end of the day?
And it's a very thoughtful plan. And I think if people hopefully will listen and follow that advice, I think this is a really good sort of framework for the rest of this year and any projects that they're considering. You are a very, very busy man. It took me a while to track you down. So thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thank
everything
you.
you shared
I
today.
appreciated being here today, and enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Alex.